So we'll go ahead. Now there are 47 folks. Hello, everybody. We have everyone from, I think I see Florida. Hi, Chris Taylor and Tim. Florida to St. Louis to, I don't even know where in between because I can't see everybody on my screen. Welcome. We had an in-person meeting yesterday. I will tell all of you, including myself, that was not in that room yesterday, that we missed a really great workshop by Lynn. And so I'm looking forward to it. I think maybe virtually it might lose a little bit of its essence. But he has important information to share. And I think we're looking at some additional opportunities for Lynn to connect with us, to talk more with us in the future. So we'll be sharing that information. A couple of logistics. Can you mute yourself, or I guess I don't know if our technology person at AIM can mute everybody, because I see somebody not muted and we're getting their background noise.
Okay, thanks.
Lynn, do you guys have the opportunity? Can you mute people on your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you do that, Tanya?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so I've unmuted myself. So I'm going to let Lynn take it from here. I think you perhaps have an opportunity to unmute yourself, and if Lynn allows for that later, let's do that. I do ask that you keep your cameras on at all times if possible, because it's a way for us to try and stay connected in a way on this topic that's really important, and also to stay connected to our presenter, Lynn, so he's not looking at a bunch of names and black boxes. So thank you, Lynn, for carving out time again today with us, and I'll let you take it from here.
Hey, thank you, Rebecca. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I know you're all muted, so you can't say good afternoon back. That's okay.
Good afternoon.
I really do appreciate being here. Here's something interesting. You know, the pandemic, there wasn't very many good things about the pandemic, but one thing that was good about it was being able to have the opportunity to do this as a presenter, as a trainer, that kind of stuff. And also as a consultant, I have found that attendance is way better than in person when we can have these opportunities to do this. The problem is, as an in-person trainer, as an old guy, I like to see people, be next to them. I'm also a psychologist, so I like to look into their soul. So I don't get to do that as much during this Zoom kind of stuff, but there's still some advantages to this as well. Today's topic, and I see Ryan, you're in San Francisco right now.
I wish. That's where my heart is, but unfortunately I'm in Springfield, Illinois in spirit.
Can you sing a couple of bars from Left My Heart in San Francisco?
No, I cannot.
Please no, please no, please no.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate that. So today's topic is respect and professionalism in the workplace. And as Rebecca said, yesterday was an in-person. We had about 30 people there. And I think it was mostly the office people. There was accounting and HR, and there were some of the higher up people and a few mixed in between. And it was really a great commitment by everyone to be a part of what we were trying to do there yesterday. Had some great discussion and stuff, which I might share some of that with you today. With this many people, Rebecca is right. It kind of gets watered down a little bit, but the information today is important. I think the people yesterday found that it was something that was worthwhile for the company. So we've got about 90 minutes together today. So what I'm asking you to do, and I appreciate Rebecca saying this, is I like to see your faces. I think all except a couple of you, I'd rather not, but doesn't mean that you're not good looking, but it's just really nice for me to be able to connect with you guys. So I want to introduce Tanya Algie. She's up there in the with the AIM in the background, and she's the producer for today, making sure everything goes smoothly. And she's been extraordinarily helpful to me. You know, I'm one of those old guys where I get technology to a certain extent, but I'm not very intuitive with it. So I need people to tell me step by step sometimes. So I appreciate Tanya doing that for me. So respect and professionalism in the workplace. It's sort of a cover for really a required training today. And that has to do with harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace. And here's what I know to be true. From surveys, people are required to go through training several times a year based on the law and different things like that. And anywhere from 80 to 90% of the people say, you know what, I got to go through this, but it's really not relevant to me. I do my job, I do well, I get along with other people, and that's all there is to it. Well, that is true to a certain extent, but today's workshop, today's training is really meant to connect you with the reason for this kind of training. And I'm not going to spend 90 minutes putting stuff up on a screen about all about harassment, the different facets of it, the law, all that kind of stuff. You actually have an HR department that have all these materials, they've disseminated it, and they have great stuff for you to take a look at and be educated about. Today is going to be more focused on our connection with each other and why it's so important for the company. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to share my screen with, yep, one of those exciting things, a PowerPoint. Okay, here we are. So this is the topic, respect and professionalism in the workplace. I'm a trainer for AIM, and maybe you've heard of AIM before. It's a company that has a wide footprint in the area. That M stands for manufacturing. Originally, their whole purpose was to work with manufacturing companies to help them connect with success by improving people and processes. And that's what they've done. And they have offices in Florida now, but this area is their main, it's their hub. And if you haven't heard of AIM before, they really have, like I said, a wide footprint. So who am I and why am I here? My name's Lynn Clapp. I am a psychologist by education, and I've got, I would say, at least 40 years of experience and experiences in my life, in professional life. And you add a couple decades to that and you'll figure out how old I am. So I'm an old guy. I've been around a long time and I've been involved in a lot of different things. So I was an educator. In fact, I worked for a public school system. I eventually was like a building principal, and then I was an assistant superintendent in charge of 500 people's development and professional development, the curriculum, and millions of dollars worth of grants. So I have the experience of being a top administrator, but I was also kind of a common guy, and I eventually was involved in the teachers union. I was president of the teachers union. So I've been on both sides of the table, and I have a consulting company. And in my consulting company, which has been going on for 11 years, my whole focus is on workplace improvement, workplace culture, leadership training. I do individual coaching with leaders. I do team building with full staffs, that kind of stuff. So, I've been on the Human Relations Commission for the city in which I live for the past 25 years. So I have for being an old guy, I got a broad range of things, and hopefully that could be a little helpful today for you guys. So I appreciate, like I said, being here. So what can we do in 90 minutes that will be truly helpful? Well, here's something that I think we need to do. Connect everyone with history and each other. Build a common vocabulary and understanding regarding topics like harassment. And I just have a note. Ignorance might be bliss, but not knowing what are and are not acceptable work-based behaviors cannot be an excuse from consequences. It's not meant to create anxiety. I'm not blaming or shaming anybody today, nor is it meant to make best friends. This is not going to be a kumbaya thing. If we were in person, I wouldn't make you do a group hug either. It's simply meant to make us better and ensure we are abiding by the law. Here's something interesting. At this point in time, you guys have to be here. It's a required training. I don't have to be here. At this point in time in my life, I get to be choosy about what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And I did a lot of research on SM Wilson, and I was incredibly intrigued by this company. And here's the reason. Companies that contact me like yours, they usually have a sense of urgency about something that's going on. For example, a couple of years ago, a manufacturing company in the Metro East contacted me, and they were freaking out because they had been working on diversifying their workforce, and most of the diversification was at the very low end, not the low end, that's not fair to say, but at the factory level, at the rank and file level. And there became problems because almost all the supervisors, the superintendents, project managers, they were all white guys who worked their way up because they had skills and they were hard workers, but they did not know really how to deal with people that were not like them. So there were things the EEOC was going to be involved. There were potential lawsuits. So I put together a committee of everybody. They tried to work out their differences, have an action plan, that kind of stuff. Another company contacted me because they sucked at hiring, 40% retention. And they said, we can't do this and be productive. We've got to figure out what to do. So we worked on building a core ideology and, do some strategic planning, that kind of stuff to get them on the right track. SM Wilson is a little different. You guys have everything in place that you need as a foundation to go from good to great. So there isn't a sense of urgency with this particular training. It's really about making this incredible organization a lot better. And that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on a little bit today. So why is this topic, respect and professionalism, trending in the workplace? It's not a fad. It's actually something that has a lot of research behind it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I have a question of the day for you guys. I've already talked way too much. What I want you to think about, what is one reason, even though you might think you're part of that 80 or 90% that this really doesn't apply to me, what is one reason why this particular training might be helpful to the company itself? I want you to think about that. And then I would love to have some responses to that. So when you feel the need to talk or you move to speak, I would like to hear what you guys had to say. And by the way, you know what the group told me yesterday? You guys are quiet. You guys are quiet in things like this. People are not real. And I guess I need you guys to prove them wrong. So here's what I want. I want at least 6 responses. There's like 45, 50 people, 60 people here now. I would like 6 or 7 responses, because usually a lot of people will just ditto all those things because those are the main things. I would like somebody to unmute and tell me one reason why you think this kind of training could be helpful to SM Wilson with their goal and their vision. I'm going to need 6 responses too.
When you feel respected and you're treated like a professional at your workplace, you actually want to come here and you actually want to work here and you become more efficient, which ultimately is a benefit for the company as a whole. We have employees who are dedicated, motivated, efficient, and working hard.
Wow, couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Jamie. Rebecca doesn't get to talk. I mean, she's HR.
Well, from a legal standpoint of view, it will keep the company from legal ramifications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joyce, that's absolutely true. Like I said, ignorance is not, it might be bliss, but it's no excuse. And I've known companies who the federal government has come down so hard on them, they don't know their head from their butt. It's a tough thing. So you want to stay in compliance. That's one reason. What else?
It helps everybody recognize acceptable and unacceptable practices in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Are you saying, Greg, that there are some people that are not aware of those things?
Potentially, like you said, the guys that are and gals that say, I don't do it, may in fact actually inherently their behaviors are obtuse and corrosive to other people.
Yeah, good point. That's 3.
Chris Taylor's talking. I can see you on my screen. Chris, take yourself off mute. Can you? It's at the very bottom left-hand corner.
Got it. Okay. No, the one thing is I think it's just a learning experience from hearing point of views from other people, especially considering our walks of life with construction and, us working nationwide. We do a lot of work, especially from our point of view. We do military work, which if you understand military, that is a very diverse group of people. So with all that is just, it opens a perspective that maybe you haven't seen, and
yeah. Hey, Chris, so you mentioned the military. I've done some stints with Scott Air Force Base and did some research. Did everybody know that the military is the most focused on diversifying its workforce in the entire country? There's no other area, healthcare, education, anywhere else that's worked harder to be diversified than the military. So you're right. If you're going to do business with them, you better know what their values are.
agreed.
How many is that? 4, 5? 4. 2 more.
Well, I'll jump in, Lynn, and say that I think overall it raises the bar for us. I mean, we're all employee owners at SM Wilson. So, if we're performing, we're feeling better about ourselves, we're performing better, potentially also, helping financially in terms of the stock of the company in the future years to come. So that's my 2 cents.
It benefits the bottom line, doesn't it? Whether or not you agree with any of that stuff, it benefits the bottom line.
I think you should treat others the way you want to be treated, and it will trickle down.
Amen. The golden rule. That was 6, but anybody else have any other things they'd like to say? 7 would make you look really great in my eyes.
Does it count if I go again?
Yes, it does.
This extends beyond our 4 walls here as well, because if we are treating our clients, our subcontractors, the other people externally that we're working with, we have a better working relationship with them as well.
Yep. Well put. And you know what? Clients recognize if you're not all together, right? They recognize if your little team seems to be in a little bit of a quandary or disarray or doesn't agree on everything too. So it's important to have that solid one purpose. Great. I'm going to take you off the hook now. Here we are again. Okay, thanks so much for those responses. So it's trending in the workplace, and you guys mentioned some of it. Businesses seek to build positive work cultures because the bottom lines are benefited. And of course, there's training requirements, but it's also the right thing to do for employees. One thing that modern business understands is that the number one thing is not business, it's we're human beings. And if we respect and work together as human beings, things are going to go really well. So here's the research I want to show you very quickly. Organizations who create and support and sustain that work environment that values, develops, protects a diverse group of workers enjoy the following. Diverse teams solve problems 87% faster and better because there's lots of different perspectives. Diversity matters to your people. 50% of average workers and 69% of leaders believe that there should be more representation at the table, and they are very aware when it's happening or not happening. Diverse employers attract excellent staff. 80% of candidates now value a diverse workplace. That's those darn millennials. These companies are destinations or employers of choice. And diverse teams perform better, outperform the competition, and gain new markets. Diverse teams are more innovative and effective. And employees who are part of a diverse environment express significantly higher ratings of job satisfaction. And if we had time today, we'd explore that. But I'm just going to tell you, job satisfaction equals fewer sick leave, much more production, all kinds of great things. And here's the one I really underscore. Employees who believe they are respected and valued become carriers of the culture. Here's something interesting. In surveys of organizations like yours, generally the upper level of management is much more optimistic and positive about their impact and how good they are. And as it trickles down all the way to the rank and file, there is less of a feeling that there is this value and respect. So if you have an organization that from the top to the bottom, bottom up and sideways in each way, people feel like they're respected and valued. If I'm an administrator, I want my rank and file to be the promoters of who we are and why we love this job. So for today, our task is this. Number one, focus. Develop a workplace where people are clearly connected to purpose and have all the opportunities, because it ensures job satisfaction and ensures the most satisfied clients. I'm going to read you a story now. I hope you don't mind. Well, even if you do, please don't mute me. It's a good story. This is from a retired general, Russell Honore. He wrote a book called Leadership in the New Normal. So here's what he said. When I was a kid, we lived near a plantation. That plantation had a sugarcane field on one side of the road and a row of small houses on the other, and every house had a dog. Every now and then a rabbit would break out of the sugarcane field and get spotted by a dog. The dog would take off after it, and as he went down the road, other dogs would join the chase. Pretty soon, that lead dog would have 7, 8, 10 dogs running and barking behind him. They'd keep running and barking until they passed every house. All the kids in the yards would stand up and watch this chaotic event. But after about a couple of minutes, all but one of the dogs would quit running, leaving only the lead dog chasing the rabbit. You see, the rest of the dogs started running and barking because they saw the lead dog doing it. And if it seemed worth running behind him, they followed. But they couldn't see the rabbit, so they stopped. But the dog that could see the rabbit, he kept running. You might see the rabbit, but if the people behind you don't, they won't be running for long. They're going to fall off. They're going to be non-believers. They're going to become non-performers. If you're the leader, you have to be sure everyone behind you sees the vision. They have to see where you want to go. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing it by yourself. When that pack of dogs took off running, only one of them could see the rabbit. The rest just followed the noise. When it appeared that there was more noise than purpose, they quit. And the lesson for today is this. The purpose that SM Wilson has, of course, is to be the best company they can be and satisfy their clients. But the purpose for today is not about that. The purpose for today is to be the best workforce we can be. And here's something interesting. Sometimes it's like HR or the top administration. They see the rabbit and they will focus on what we need to do with that vision. And part of the vision is this. We want to eliminate harassment in the workplace. We want people to value each other and respect each other. And that's the purpose that everyone needs to see. And the reason for today's training is to help everyone understand that it's not just HR. It's not just the top supervisors that need to worry about this kind of thing in the workplace. Everybody has a responsibility. And we'll explore that a little bit more in a little bit. Okay, the way it was. Here's a question for you. How many people here, just a show of hands, or you can raise your hand in your little box or whatever it might be. How many people here have been here less than 5 years? Okay. How many people here have been 5 to 9 years? What about 10 to 15? 16 to 20? How about over 20 years? Congratulations to all of you. You must own like 50% of the company by now. That's great. Here's the question for you. This is super important when we're talking about how we connect everyone with this purpose today, that we're all responsible for each other. When I was a young educator, 2 weeks I had gotten hired. I had 3 old teachers come up and almost push me against the locker. And they said, you need to know where we're at right now because of where we came from. So this was in the early 80s. And these people talked about in the 70s, and educational history is this. There were huge wars in the 70s between school boards and the teachers about pay, benefits, that kind of stuff. 2 out of 3 of these teachers were arrested and spent time in jail because they had picket lines, and they were instrumental in making sure everyone went on strike, and striking was illegal. They talked about all the things they went through to make sure that someone like me, a new guy, had all the benefits that they worked hard and fought for. So here's the question, especially for you people that have been here 10 years and older. What was it like back in the day? 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What is different about this company now or then than it is now? So I'd like some, I'm going to want like 7 or 8 responses. And even if you've only been here a few years, if you see that there's a difference in this environment, the workforce, the way you're treated, the way business is run, all those kinds of things, I would like everybody to understand the way it was. So think about that. And anybody can unmute and talk about the way it was.
Well, when I started, we didn't even have an HR department. Then our safety guy became our HR guy, and then we got an HR department. But it's amazing, if, especially being, when I started, I was, an intern and then a project engineer out on the job site. And, I was in the upper category. So I've been here for a while. And so I was one of the only few women that were around, and there was no support. There was no one to go to when things were ugly, and they were often ugly.
Thank you.
A lot of the, I'll call it the older generation, got things done by yelling and screaming. That really doesn't resonate with people anymore.
Yeah. It's the Bobby Knight way of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would piggyback your way. I've been here close to almost 10 years, but before I started here, the old way was to, it was almost fear and bullying is how you got production. You pushed your guys, and you took that as, kind of warranted you to work harder. You knew that if the guy was on you, then he probably liked you, stuff like that. It was just a different time of how things were approached. And
Yeah.
it's probably mental gymnastics, if anything, but.
So Chris, the general assumption is that, okay, the workers don't care as much about this as I do. Therefore I need to push them to do that. They're not as committed, kind of an us versus them thing.
Oh, and it's the bottom line, it's always the bottom line, especially when you're working, but especially SM Wilson now is 100% more, they recognize, that the people matter, people over profits, things like that. It really does matter.
Yeah. By the way, that was 3. We need 4 more.
I guess just to add, I mean, the conversation that we're having today, we would have never even thought about it having 15 years ago.
Why is that, Tom?
It was never brought up. It's just,
Because we have an actual HR department now.
Those darn HR departments.
Justin, he asked you to turn your camera on, not off, by the way.
Oh, I heard him.
Our IT guy can't figure it out.
Well, I can figure it out. We're testing the bounds of my ADHD medication today, so you don't want to see what's going on here. It's fine.
Couple more. The way it was.
I was gonna say, when I was a kiddo here at Wilson, you could smoke in the office. And there was, to Jamie's perspective, there was maybe 3 or 4 women in the whole office. I remember when I was really little, there was 1 woman in the office. And that was it. That's a huge change. The other thing too, I agree with everybody. I mean, the attitudes of, they do a lot of cussing and yelling and screaming, but I really think Wilson now, it's really about communication and opening that up and being clear about things and not just screaming. That's what I see has changed completely in the organization. And I think the people that helped us get here to where we are today, there's been a ton of change and growth. And when you're a 100-year-old company, you kind of start from being a baby steps to help. We're sold of a company. We've made mistakes now like 3 times. So, every 30 years you kind of repeat something. But I wouldn't say Wilson has completely changed from the old to the new. We're completely employee owned, which is great for everybody, because that way you don't have to put your house, your life, you don't have to put that in jeopardy. You can show up here to Wilson and own the company, a piece of it, and not have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's changed.
I would just say
financially, yeah.
I would just say, as a newer employee, I've been around for 20 years, but I'm newer to Wilson. That the one thing I've noticed with just being here is this is the most welcoming I've ever felt with a company. And I do truly believe, out of everybody I've met, Wilson has done a great job at hiring good people, people that care. Professionalism goes a long way here as well. Well, I think the reality of the situation is that the workforce changes the workplace. So I think you are going to have to keep hiring people. So you have to keep adjusting to the people. And so I think, the more people, the generations are more in touch with the mental health aspect of things and, just equality overall in those situations. But I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think we've done a pretty good job, at least in the last, how long's Rebecca been here? 10 years. Since we've done a good job in the last 10 years of adjusting to that. It's not perfect, but I think it's definitely improved, I would say.
I think one of the changes that I've seen on my time is we're not all related. There was a time when everybody in the company was related to each other. In brothers and sisters, fathers and sons.
Yeah, that's really changed. Yeah.
That Paul, you know this. Used to, everybody was related to somebody in the company.
Yep.
Although I love that comes from somebody who still is around that
Yeah.
has relatives.
I was gonna say,
since I have a 3rd generation in the company
Right.
now. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. You're right.
Well, yeah,
He's only related to half the people now, not all.
Top of the nepotism
Right.
food chain, Steve.
Right, minor detail.
I'm muting myself again.
Love you,
No,
Steve.
you're good, Steve. You're good.
I think with that all being said and all that joking, transparency, I came from a company that did everything in their power to withhold information to basically use it as leverage. Most of their superintendents were in the dark about where their projects truly were at, whether they were generating a decent profit or they were, losing money or where they stood. I believe we as a company are far more transparent in that category, and it helps the people feel more secure about where they stand, and at least they're aware of what's happening within their project, and it's not used as leverage against you. You know where you stand, and so you know where you need to make the change to either better your job or keep the momentum going.
That was way past my requirement. You guys may have to stay longer today so I can get through all the material because you talk so much. Hey, a couple of other things that I think it was Justin that mentioned we have to learn to adjust to the workers that we get. In education, when I grew up, and some of you old codgers, no one's older than me, but back in the day, kids had to accommodate how the teacher taught. Now teachers teach based on how the kids learn. And it's no different in business. When you have a workforce, you have to acknowledge how they're different and how they can best serve the bottom line, as opposed to this is the way we do things and you're just going to have to fit into that. It's good that you have a flexibility on how we do things. If you say it's always been that way, it's the way we've always done it, you're doomed to failure. Any other comments before I go to the next thing? Thanks a lot. That was amazing stuff. And really, it really is about connecting everyone to understand the way it used to be. And that way you appreciate so much more the way it is now. So another question, see if I can get this going here. Come on. Okay, I'm going to ignore that right now. So here's something I wanted to let you know. The reason I was intrigued by SM Wilson and what you guys are saying kind of follows along with the company line. And here's what in SM Wilson's own words: we transform the construction industry by putting people first and leading with excellence. You had me at people on that one. And here's the reason. Most companies will say by putting clients first and leading with excellence. What you guys are saying is you're putting people, not just clients, but the internal clients, the workforce, and the community as well. And that's so incredibly important. Here's SM Wilson's expectations, and I'm sure all of you can recite these by memory. Your values, you have own it, which means accountability. That's a big one that I'm going to come back to a little bit later. Doing the right thing, being intentional about making sure we do the right thing at every time, pursuing excellence beyond expectations, and working as one, meaning common goals and purpose. So here's a question. What is an ideal work culture? I'm not going to ask you to talk about, we don't have a lot of time today. If we had a half a day, I'd ask you to explore that. But here's something that I think it's relevant to today. An ideal culture is one that makes a place for every human gift. That's Margaret Mead. So here's a little activity I want you to think about. And luckily, we're not in person, so you won't make eye contact with anybody. But I want you to think about someone that you've worked with, either now or in the recent past, that kind of drives you crazy. Someone that sometimes you think about when you leave or when you're coming to work, you're thinking, oh God, I hope I don't have to see Paul. Oh my God, it'll drive, I just can't do it. So think about that person that maybe drives you a little bit crazy, their personality, the way they work, the way they talk, whatever it might be. that drives you crazy? Then imagine if you could say anything you wanted to that person without any pushback at all. When I've worked with organizations before, I get things like this. Oh, I wish he would just shut the hell up. Get a life. If you talk one more time about your new grandbaby and how it poops and pees and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to shoot you because I'm not going to shoot myself. Those kinds of things. And people have some pretty dramatic things to say sometimes, sometimes maybe a little bit profane. But then I do this a lot in my individual coaching. When that person is vented all about that person, it might be a superior, someone that's in charge of them or whatever it might be. Then I ask them, okay, you've talked a lot about what they don't bring, what drives you crazy. The next thing I need you to do is talk about what they do bring to the table. What is their value? And you're not allowed to say, I don't know, or they have none, because they work here at this company with you, and there is some value that got them hired and some value that keeps them on the payroll. So what is it that they do bring to the table? And I've never had one person ever say, there's nothing, they just need to be fired. They can always find something of value that that person does bring to the table. Part of the point of today is this: we are a diverse workforce. There are many different people. It's not all white guys anymore. It's a lot of different people. And with a lot of different people comes a lot of different personalities and challenges to being able to get along. So finding that thing that they value or that they are of value is really important. The last part of that homework assignment I give people that I coach, and I would give to you today, would be this. Now you have to let that person know. As much as you hate to do it, as much as you cannot stand to go in there, find a way to tell them what you see as their value. You'd be really surprised at the reaction you get, and perhaps it could change. They may not talk about their pooping grandbaby anymore. It might be something more important, because what they're wanting to a certain extent is your attention. So the idea behind today is not just about how are we going to be in compliance with the rules and the laws about harassment. It's about how do we create an environment so that these things never happen. It's really being very proactive. And again, that's why I liked the idea of working with SM Wilson, because you have all those kinds of things in place already. Richard Branson, blonde, long-haired, bearded, good-looking guy. He's probably in his 80s now, but he owns Virgin Galactic and Virgin Airlines, and he had Virgin Records a long time ago. Here's what he said: clients do not come first in my book. Employees come first, because if I take care of my employees, they will automatically take care of the clients. So it's a whole different way of thinking in the business world, that you take care of your internal clients first, and your external clients would all automatically be taken care of. I'm going to try and put this back on and see if it'll work. It looks like my little clicker ain't working here. Let's see here.
I can see your screen, Lynn.
Yeah, I'm trying to change the okay, here we go. Sorry about the delay. There's Richard Branson. I'm trying to kind of look like him a little bit, but actually this was pandemic related hair. So anyway, 60% of people who quit their jobs do so not because of the benefits, not because of the work. It's because of the people they work with, whether it's leadership or fellow employees, that kind of stuff. 60% because of people. That's why it's so important to address people. And then someone once said, and you've probably heard this before, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So no matter how many strategic plans you have, action plans, any of that kind of stuff. The one company that had 40% retention, if employees stayed there for 1 month, they would buy them a 57-inch TV. That wasn't enough to keep them there. So it's really about culture. It's really about the place that people work. And one last thing, Martin Luther King said, we should build a beloved community together. And beloved doesn't mean that it's all lovey-dovey and hugs and stuff. What he meant was it's a place and idea that the well-being of ourselves and the community is tied to the well-being of each person. This kind of community includes a circle of safety where everyone feels safe, supported, and valued, not just the clients, but staff as well. And there are no justas in a beloved community. When you have an us versus them, the them is usually they'll say, I don't know what they're doing up in the ivory tower. I'm just a whatever. And then finally, I wanted to share with you what I consider the best definition of leadership there is in the entire world. It is this: the skills of influencing people to enthusiastically work towards goals identified as being for the common good with character that inspires confidence. And here's the keys. It's a skill, which means it isn't something that comes natural to everybody, but it's influencing people to enthusiastically work towards goals demonstrated as for the common good. So here's the bottom line. Even if you have no positional power, can you still impact the culture? Yes, with influence. So I have another story I'd like to tell everybody. This is from the book QBQ, The Question Behind the Question by John Miller. It's a short read if you ever want to read something that's pretty amazing. But here's a story he wrote about a personal experience he had. It was a beautiful day in downtown Minneapolis when I stopped into a rock bottom restaurant for a quick lunch. The place was jammed. I didn't have much time, so I was happy to grab the one stool they had available at the bar. A few minutes after I sat down, a young man carrying a tray full of dirty dishes, the busboy, hurried past me on his way to the kitchen. But noticing me out of the corner of his eye, he stopped, came back and said, "Sir, have you been helped?" "No, I haven't," I said, "but all I really want is a salad and a couple of rolls." "I can get you that, sir. What would you like to drink?" "I'll have a Diet Coke, please." "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We sell Pepsi. Would that be all right?" No thanks," I said with a smile. "I'll just have water with lemon, please." "Great. I'll be back." And he disappeared. Minutes later, he came back with the salad, the rolls, and the water. I thanked him, and he's quickly gone again, leaving me to enjoy my meal, a very satisfied customer. Suddenly, there was a blur of activity off to my left. The wind of enthusiasm stirred behind me, and then over my right shoulder stretched the long arm of service, delivering a 20-ounce bottle, frosty on the outside, cold on the inside of, you guessed it, Diet Coke. "Wow," I said, "thank you." "You're welcome," he said with a smile, and hurried off again to bus his dishes. My first thought was, I'm going to hire this young man. Talk about going the extra mile. He was clearly not your average employee. But the more I thought about the extraordinary thing he'd just done, the more I wanted to talk to him. So as soon as I could get his attention, I waved him over. "Excuse me, I thought you didn't sell Coke," I said. "That's right, sir, we don't." "Well, where did this come from?" "The grocery store around the corner, sir." I was taken aback. "Who paid for it?" "I did, sir. It was just $1." By then I was thinking profound and professional thoughts like, cool. But what I said was, come on, you've been awfully busy. How did you have time to go get it? Smiling and seemingly growing taller before my eyes, he said, "I didn't, sir. I sent my manager." I couldn't believe it. So it's a great story that talks about leadership as influence. As Tom Izzo said, I've always said a player-coach team is better than a coach-coach team. And the bottom line is this. If I ask you guys, we don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but if I ask you guys, what was the main point of this story? A lot of people will say, that kid was amazing. He was willing to do whatever it took to satisfy a customer. He got out of his role, all that kind of stuff. But I can tell you this, the real focus on this was the very last line where it said, "I didn't, sir. I sent my manager." The manager was willing to do whatever it took to empower that employee to be the best he could be, even a busboy, to satisfy that customer. And that's kind of the point, partly the point of today. It is that every single person, rank and file, all the way up to the COO and whoever else, it's really about influence. And we can influence a situation no matter who we are. In fact, SM Wilson has some really high expectations for all the employees. And that is to own it, to hold everyone accountable, to do whatever it takes to do the best we can be. I'm going to skip this to go here. I was working with a group of employees a couple of months ago, and there were about 90 people. They invited their whole staff, not a big company, but big enough to have everybody there on one day. And it was an all-day training about leadership, about being better, about the culture. And so at one point in time, they talked about communication and that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, so we took we did some team building. So I happen to have a 150-foot rope there. And we put the rope into the shape of a big triangle and put lines across it. And we said, okay, this is the organizational chart of most companies. At the top is the executive director, COO, CEO, whoever it might be. And then what I want you to do is find your place in the triangle where you believe you need to be. So we had the top two people that were at the top. The next level were the directors. There were about 3 or 4 of them. Then there were the supervisors, and then there were the rank and file. What we found is that no one seemed comfortable in those spots, even though that's kind of a general organizational chart. The employees who were the rank and file were at the bottom, and they were all crowded together, nose to nose, shoulder to shoulder. And so I asked them some questions. How is communication in a system like this? They all said it sucked. How is access? They all said it sucked. And a few other questions. And finally, I asked them, so what would you suggest? And one of the people in the rank and file said, let's make a great big circle. So what they did is they made this giant circle, and everybody could move around in it freely. The top people had access to the rank and file. The rank and file had access to everyone. There was greater communication. It was really this sense of relief and elbow room and all that kind of stuff. So the point of this is simply that if a company wants to do well and put their money where their mouth is, they have to develop a circle of safety, meaning that every single employee can feel empowered and responsible for every other employee. It's what Martin Luther King talked about as a beloved community. Okay, we've set the stage for what we're here about today in terms of compliance. We're going to talk a little bit for a while about harassment. These two guys are two of my best friends. They actually allowed me to put their pictures up here and make fun of them if I wanted to. The guy in the green is just retired a year ago from Boeing. He had a long career there in Boeing. He was a machine maintenance guy. The guy on the right in the red worked at Granite City Steel for much of his young life and middle age, and then got cut and went to Mallinckrodt, and he retired just a few months ago. Like me, they're two old white guys and good guys with the greatest hearts ever. They both have grandkids, wonderful wives. Everything is really good. And it's kind of funny. So I've known them a really, really long time. I got master's degrees. I got enough hours and certifications to have 2 PhDs. And yet, whenever we get together, in fact, we were camping in Colorado together a couple of weeks ago. They spent a week there with their wives and my wife. We were camping in our campers. We had a chance to go to town because they needed to fix one of their gas lines in their camper. It was just the 3 of us. As soon as we get together in the truck, we act like freaking 15-year-olds. Being stupid, being goofy, being sophomoric, all the goofy stuff that guys our age do, and maybe guys our age younger. But here's something interesting. We were sitting around the campfire one night, and we were talking about a lot of things. And here's kind of how the conversation went to a certain extent. One of them said, I think it's the end of the world. It's all going to hell. There's nothing good going on in this world right now. Nothing good at all. Another part of the conversation had to do with all the changes that we're expected to abide by. He says, I was raised a certain way. I don't see why I got to change. I was raised well. I don't see why I got to change. Here was another one. So now I can't open a door for a woman without getting yelled at. This kind of training is not for me. I'm not that way. They talked about all the trainings they had to go through when they were working. They said, it's not for me. And then the last one was a biggie. Why can't I just do my freaking job and not all this other stuff? I do my job well. Why do I have to sit through all this other stuff? Why have to have to worry about other employees and that kind of stuff? So the question for all of you is this. What is changing about this world that makes it so hard for some people, especially people like me, old white guys? What are the changes that we're struggling with? And if you're an old white guy, feel free to tell us what you think is a difficult time. Be honest. Be honest. I can be honest. I'm on the Human Relations Commission for the city I go to for 20 years. And yet I go to a restaurant and my wife says, when you get served, don't say yes, sir, because one time it wasn't a sir at all. And so my friends and I, we don't know whether to say he, she, they, all those kinds of things. It's really a struggle for some of us guys. So what are the other struggles that people in my generation, maybe a little bit younger, certainly older, are struggling with? Let's hear some ideas.
A perceived loss of power.
Like what kind of power, Justin?
All the power. The power.
Yeah. Yeah, the world is going to hell. All these women, all these minorities. Oh my God, the Mexicans coming across the border, this and that, on and on and on. I have a lot of old guy friends, and sometimes it gets pretty frustrating listening to them, but I can't ignore how they're feeling, right? I mean, it doesn't mean they're right, but that's the struggle that we're having. And it is a fear, right, Justin? It's based on fear.
Yeah.
What are they afraid they're losing? What power do you think they're losing? Because my two guys will say, we were just factory workers. We didn't have any power. We were at the low levels. What kind of power do guys like me worry about losing?
I mean, I personally don't think it's a power thing. I think it's a change thing. I think human nature, if you want to look at us from the beginning, or the main human element is we're not great with change. You have to learn something new. You have to adapt to what you already know. It's adding another step to your process that typically wasn't there because now you have to do this, or you actually have to think about it instead of it being second nature, where it's like, now I have to do this check mark, like with HR, or if you have a safety department. Oh, now I have to do these weekly meetings every week on the job site, where before a safety department never needed. So I think it's just change overall is it's kind of over, encompassing of everything. So.
Right. Good point.
Lynn, can I talk?
Yes, you can. Darn HR people.
I think sometimes it's a sense, to Justin's point, and I'm not going to put words in Justin's mouth, but maybe just a sense of not having the autonomy or the control to do the ways and things that you have worked and for you in the past, or that you feel currently work. I don't know. I mean, change, to Chris's point, change is hard. And with change, you lose some of that control. It's the unknown. It's okay, I've got to do something different, but that's not how I would do it. That's not my preference. It's not my comfort. So, it can't go rogue. Now there are these things in place that are guiding me in a direction that is unfamiliar to me. It's something I've not experienced before. I am a woman. I identify as a woman. But but I'm a white woman, so I have a sense of privilege in things that other folks don't, other women perhaps don't. So I think part of that might be that the fear of not sort of being in charge or in control and having these extra things that we have to think about and we have to interact with.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it comes down to people feeling like they're being attacked personally, and that you're telling them that they're a horrible person and that they're doing all the wrong things and then yada, yada, yada. And really what it comes down to is people being held accountable when in the past they weren't, which has to do a lot with changing society in general, technology, social morals, whatever. But I think a lot of it comes down to people feeling like ultimately their way of life and the way they've always been is being attacked, which makes them feel like you're literally attacking them as a human being. And they don't know how to change that perception into not feeling like it's literally like you're telling them that they're a horrible person.
I think they're kind of right on that too, Don. And it's more to that there might be that feeling of, oh, I've got to do this for this person, and it's taking something away from you. Like if you have to do that, or this person maybe gets an opportunity that you feel was yours because of, a certain law or certain situation. So it could be you could feel like this person moving up is actually taking something from you instead of, just that typical step ladder up that there always was.
And I think nowadays people are demanding respect, and it's like, who are you to tell me what I should not say, or how I should or should not say it, or why I should and should not say it.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine there's people on this call right now that feel this way for sure, and that I have an opinion and I'm going to say it, and this is who I am, and some people are just going to have to accept that. And there is nothing wrong with that. The wrong part is if it impacts other people around you. That's the issue. If it has something to do with how other people feel. When I'm with my buddies, we are acting like 15-year-old boys sometimes, and we're doing nobody any harm. But once someone else is there with us, that's a problem. So it's being able to move in and out of certain kinds of, I guess you could call it a subculture, that we have difficult time doing. And we resent having to worry too much about what's politically correct. But it's a reality. It's like Justin said earlier, when you have a workplace that represents many different people, you have to change. You have to change. And the point of this training today, like I could get to the next level and just say, don't do this, don't do that. You guys know better. It's really about understanding each other. So help other people understand you as well as understanding them. I mentioned yesterday, whatever you think, those of you that even remember Jane Fonda back in the 60s and 70s, she was a firecracker for sure and created a lot of diverse opinions about this and that. But one thing she said not long ago, she said, one of the things that as human beings, we really need to work on. And she goes, people like me with a big ego and that kind of stuff, I have to learn this too. What she said was this: when I meet people, especially people that I'm mentoring that look up to me or that I want to have a relationship with, I have to work on being more interested than interesting to start off with. I have to learn what are they bringing? What is the question behind what they're telling me? So if I got an old white guy raising holy hell, instead of raising holy hell back, I have to figure out, I have to understand where he's coming from right now. Doesn't mean I accept it, but I don't have to rail against it right away. Eventually, I'll have a chance, hopefully, to help him understand where I'm coming from as well. So that's part of the thing here. We're trying to build a culture here at SM Wilson about mutual respect. And mutual respect means understanding where people come from, but not accepting something that's going to be hurtful to others. Okay. All right, let's make this work. There we go. So here's what needs to happen just very, very quickly. There needs to be clear guidelines and expectations so people really know what's expected of them, and so that they know I can't step over these lines. Training for everybody. Leaders are so important. Those of you that are supervisors, superintendents, that people answer to you. This is extraordinarily important for you because SM Wilson has high expectations. One of them is the own it. We have to own it and be accountable. It doesn't mean that we're just accountable for ourselves. We have to expect other people to be held accountable. And the hardest thing for anybody to do in a leadership position is to hold other people accountable. It's not easy. And more often than not, the yelling and all that kind of stuff happens is because we let it go too long, and then we get frustrated, and then we let it out. There has to be learning zone opportunities, meaning we need to take days like today and really spend some time figuring some things out. There has to be a circle of safety supported by leadership, policy, bystander involvement, and a culture of genuine respect and shared responsibility. So these are things I'm not going to read through, because I can tell you this, your HR department has a wealth of these kind of things that they've distributed. Everyone should have the information about what harassment is. Everybody knows what harassment is about, but there are subtleties about what harassment is. And here are some examples of hostile work environment harassment. Posters, calendars, sending emails that have inappropriate things, all these kinds of things that target someone, whatever it might be. There's 20 more things that you could add to this list that people might do. And these are the egregious kinds of things that's obvious to everybody, but sometimes they're not so obvious. And what about the victims? What about the people that are targeted? There's a real simple question for anybody, whether you're someone that might be targeting someone or might be targeted. Does this action offend you? That's the litmus test. All it takes is for someone to say yes, and the company has a responsibility to act. Supervisors have a responsibility to act. You know, in the school system, there is a situation, if a child says, I am uncomfortable going home tonight because of my stepdad or whatever, or we have to take action. If we do not in some way take action, we will be criminally liable for not doing something about it. In the same way, businesses have become more and more this way too. If a business knew, anybody in a business that represents the business knew about a situation happening and they did nothing, the company becomes liable. And there are other questions that relate to, being uncomfortable that go further. Okay, I wanted to, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I got a couple of things I really think is important that we close this day out on. This is kind of a cool picture. That's my daughter. Her name is Ashley. Beautiful girl, takes after her mother. But she works in HR, had worked in HR for a manufacturing company for 12 years. She's got a new job now, but she really enjoyed it. But her first assignment was not at the main office. It was at the manufacturing plant in the HR office. And here, this young, nice looking lady is in the HR department. And it's all these guys, almost all guys working out in the plant, and the supervisors and everyone else. And this particular guy, she reenacted this. She said, Dad, I never told you about this, but it's something that maybe you could use. She said, there was one of the plant managers who came up and loved to interact with her. And she goes, he reminds me of my Uncle Bruce. He's just goofy and silly and sometimes, but she said that one time he came up and said, hey, I want to tell you about when I was in Cancun and I was at a stripper club and what this stripper did. And he proceeded to tell her what it did. And she was like, I cannot believe he told me this. I cannot believe. I said, what did you do, Ashley? She said, well, I just said in a kind of a fun way, stop it, Bob. And he just went on. And she said, someone else heard it. Someone else in the office, another guy. And he said, Ashley, don't worry about it. That's just Bob. He's just stupid. That's just Bob. And in hindsight, Ashley said, I thought about different ways I could deal with that. And basically, I blew him off and I said, stop it, Bob. Don't do that anymore. And occasionally he would still come up with a dirty joke or something silly. And she said, I realized I'm a guy, I'm a girl, I've got uncles. This stuff does not bother me. I can blow it off, that kind of stuff. But did I not have a responsibility to report that? But she said, when I thought about if I reported it, that would get him in trouble. And it'd be like my Uncle Bruce. I'd be getting my Uncle Bruce fired or in trouble or something like that. So that's the complexity of what we're dealing with when it's those minor things. If Bob told her a dirty joke and she said, stop it, Bob, and he never did it again, then that's the end of that. That's not really considered harassment that's worth actionable kinds of things. But if he kept it up or if he did it with someone else, then that's a problem. So that's the dilemma you guys have in trying to make SM Wilson a much better company, is what is our responsibility? What are we supposed to do? Well, let me tell you some things. The bystander factor. We don't talk about this that much. We tell people, if you're a victim, report it. But you know what? Victims are often targeted because of what the perpetrator thinks they'll get by with. So they may not be as strong to be able to stand up to it. And a lot of times in companies, they're not supported. Or the guy gets a hand slap and then comes back and is not happy about it. So it's a very difficult thing to figure out. But here's the deal. Preventing harassment is everybody's responsibility. Your SM Wilson value is that you own it. Accountability. And another one of them is you've got to do the right thing. By allowing something to go on, if you witness it or if you're aware of it, you have to take some kind of action, whatever that might be. So here are some options that people have. And if we had time today, we'd actually practice them, especially if we were in person. Disrupt the situation. If you are a witness to this, you want to come in and disrupt the situation by doing something simple. The person that's doing it, the Bob, is to redirect him to something else. Or to say, Bob, you need to stop that. She doesn't need to hear that. And he'll laugh and walk away, and that'd be it. The other thing is, don't act alone. If you are witness to something like this, maybe it's just a it's just something that you're not sure what to do about, then ask somebody else about it, a coworker or someone else, to figure out what to do about it. Talk to your supervisor. You want to model the expectation of disrupting the situation. Everybody, whether you're rank and file or anyone else, you have to be willing to intervene in some way and understand and use your privileged status. If I'm a white guy and I don't have the experience, but I have the power and I have the clout in this situation, then I need to use that. And then the other thing is, express your support for the targeted person. You go up to Ashley and say, Ashley, you shouldn't have to put up with that. Let me know if that happens again, as opposed to acting on your own. So I'm really talking about the bystander factor is probably the biggest thing. It's no one is allowed to have this kind of behavior, and no one is allowed to ignore it or not do anything about it. So the challenge for SM Wilson, for you, whether you're rank and file, you're a supervisor, you're a superintendent, whatever it might be, whoever you are, it's not just HR's responsibility to take care of these things. It's everyone's responsibility. If you want to have a culture that's strong, that's respectful, and that's reliable, these are the kinds of things you need to do. And see, here's the thing. Old guys like me generally do not have the experience. We joke about it. We go, oh, I wish I could be sexually harassed sometime. No, you don't. Actually, I want to give you an incident of when I was a victim, if you can believe it. When I was in my late 50s, I was the assistant superintendent of schools. And we have an employee, a lady who is 15 years younger than me, that was brilliant. She was a brilliant reading specialist. But when we put her in schools, she didn't play well with anybody and usually was not very effective. So we created a position for her as a coach. And she wasn't assigned to any school, but what she was done, she was invited to come in and help teachers with their teaching and that kind of stuff. And she was highly successful at it, had a reputation for being the expert, and it was a wonderful thing. Because I was instrumental in getting her that, she decided she was in love with me. Now, I want you to imagine this. 15 years ago, my face didn't look a whole lot different than now. I was not a beautiful guy. So it shocked me, and I couldn't believe it was happening. But she was very clever and very, very secretive about it. I'd get voicemails, I'd get text, emails, whatever it might be. And it got to be extraordinarily inappropriate. So I talked with my superintendent, who is a good friend of mine too. And he says, what are we going to do about this? We were at the top of the ladder in terms of administration, and we didn't know what to do about it. And I said, well, look, here's the deal. She's 15 years younger than me. If we do something about this, she can easily say it was really me. And I'm the guy in power. I'm the guy in charge. My reputation, my job, everything was at stake. I did not know what to do. And I said, let me do my best to deal with it on my own. So basically, I blocked her from my phone. I sent her an email and I said, I want you to stop sending me these emails, and please respect my wishes if you respect me. I got lucky. She did. She did. But this was not an easy situation. And here's what I'm saying. It's not to say, oh, I understand how you women feel about this kind of stuff. No, no, no. What I do understand is it's an extremely difficult situation for a victim. That is why we have to make sure that we are all in this together and that we all act together and, you know, for each other's support. So that's kind of the bottom line. It's not an easy thing to deal with. It's not a thing to understand how to do, but until you've been in that situation, and I wanted to mention 1 out of 3 women in industry, in business, report that they have been harassed, sexually harassed at one time or another. That's an incredible number of people, and most of them say that they don't report it. So that's kind of what we're dealing with, and that's kind of the crux and the important part to take away today. We talked at the beginning of this day about building a culture that includes everyone, and that everyone is responsible. At the end of this day, kind of bringing you down about these real kinds of things, but it's important that we all enforce and hold accountable each other for having a better culture. SM Wilson is recognized as one of the most respected design and construction management firms in the Midwest, committed to adding great value and building client partnerships that are substantial and strong. The same type of commitment is expected internally with each other as well. The quality of our interactions with each other is to be respectful and professional for productive working relationships. I mentioned at the beginning of today, I was intrigued by working with a company like SM Wilson because you are in the forefront of working intentionally on building a culture that respects each other. And this is, I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything. What I'm saying is you are on the right track. The things that you said today about how this company has changed, how much it's an appeal, and not only that, you've got 90% plus retention rate here. That means you're doing something really well together and valuing what you're trying to do. So all I can say is keep it up. Doing the right thing, it will gratify some people and astonish the rest. Mark Twain. So I appreciate your attention today. Is there anybody that has any parting comments that they would like to mention based on some of the training today? Like especially one thing that really jumped out at you today. Before I let you go today, I have to have at least 5 or 6 responses on what jumped out at you today. What is something that could be perhaps defining based on the training today? Go ahead.
Well, I would say the Jane Fonda, what Jane Fonda said, work on being interested instead of being interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of resonated with me.
Or more.
I mean, I would say that it's kind of the last thing you really said in regards to, you see situations instead of being there and being like, oh, that's Bill. Cause I guarantee all of us have done it. You heard a joke and you cringe and you walk off like, geez, instead of just walking off and kind of removing yourself. Maybe you need to step in, and especially us leaders, need to step in and really make sure, that the people that work under us and beside us are protected. So
well said.
I think for me is, the key thing, kind of tying on to what Chris said is using that privilege, whatever privilege you have, right? Like, Rebecca said, I am a woman, so I'm at a disadvantage on some things, but I am a white woman. So that does come with different privileges that other folks here don't have. So using your responsibility, quote Spider-Man, with great power comes a great responsibility. And so we have to use it, right?
Mm-hmm. Two more.
People don't respond to yelling anymore like they used to back in the day.
One more.
I think the fact that we realize that there are differences in people, older, younger, we all have different views is what I took away from it. Being an old person, that's why I'm saying that. But I mean, there's like 5 generations right now that are within this, and everyone has a different view on what's the correct way to do something. So that's what I took away from it.
Yeah. That's your 5. Anybody else?
Kind of piggybacks on something weird I teach my daughters, but it's actually very relevant in the business world. Is the number 1 rule is don't be a dick. So be a nice person, be good to people would be good back to you.
Greg, I don't know how old your daughter is, but why don't you refer to it as Richard?
Nice.
You know what? This, Rebecca, this would be a great poster, having Greg's face on it with his finger up like this and saying, don't be a dick. Yeah, I love it.
I'll do that.
Hey, and one last thing to mention to you. I'm not saying that you've got to contact HR for everything. If a Bob comes up, and hopefully there's no Bobs here right now, poor Bob. But if Bob comes up and you catch him doing something like that, all you have to do, if you want to save his life and save his job, is to go up to him and say, don't do that anymore. Don't do that. not the person that's being targeted, but the person, a bystander. Don't do that anymore, Bob. You'll get in trouble. I love you, man. But if you report everything to Rebecca, then that could create some problems. But you have to have a little bit of judgment. But if it happens the second time, that's when you take, because if it happens just once, as long as it's not incredibly egregious, just tell them to stop clearly.
Thank you, Lynn. And I was going to save my takeaway, but you said at the very beginning, and it resonated with me, and I actually wrote it down, that we are all carriers of the culture. And so it's about how are we carrying our culture, and all of these takeaways that everybody shared are direct examples of how each of us can carry that culture and the kind of culture that we want for everyone.
Amen. And if everybody could put their hands like this real quick, just real quick. Everybody, come on, I'm watching everybody. All right, we said it's not kumbaya, but group hug. All right. Hey, thanks so much for your attention today. Greatly appreciate it. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys, and you weren't quiet at all. So thanks so much.